And we've got some breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, where day 2 of the Ryder Cup is in the books. Europeans lead now 10.5 to 5.5 in the Ryder Cup. USA really trying to stay alive and change the narrative in day 2. Now, the Americans didn't start off the morning so hot. They dropped 3 of the 4 morning sessions. You can see McIlroy there and Fleetwood beating JT and Spieth. Same with Scheffler and Koepka, losing the biggest defeat in Ryder Cup history, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Homa and Harman, the only ones to come out with a dub in the morning session. In the afternoon 4-ball, things were a tad better for the Americans. Burns and Morikawa, Homa and Harman winning those in the 4-ball in session 4. And now the U.S. is down 5.5. Europeans still leading 10.5. They need 4 points to win the Ryder Cup. Rick Gehman, Kyle Porter joining us live. We got boots on the ground, tapping in from Rome. Guys, Europe now leads 10.5 to 5.5. They need those 4 points to take back the Ryder Cup for a win. It has been rough for the U.S. really all the way up until this last session, guys. And I asked you before we came on camera, do you think we can win it all? And your answers are what, KP?
No, I don't. And listen, Jacqueline, today was good for the United States. They played well. Didn't obviously got kind of roasted in a couple of matches this morning, but they came back, and today was a split day. You know, they everybody went 4-4 today. Both teams went 4-4. The problem for them was obviously they lost the first session on Friday 4-0. But then, Rick, I thought the bigger problem was they really kind of kicked away a few matches late, or you could say Europe came and took them late on Friday in those 4 balls. If you go back and look, they were up 3-1 late in the day. And if you go 3-1 in that session on Friday afternoon and then split today, you're in it on Sunday going into singles. But they didn't do that on Friday, and so they had an uphill climb on Saturday. And they just didn't really do enough to get close enough going into singles to I think, have a chance to win this Ryder Cup.
Yeah, Kyle said it right. A split on Saturday is not good enough if you got smoked on Friday, which is exactly what happened to the Americans. And the math just doesn't really add up at this point, right? They're going to have to go out and get 8.5 out of a possible 12 points in singles, and they're probably not going to be favorites in many of those matchups. So it's a big uphill battle. I think the big winners, though, of this Saturday were the fans. I mean, we finally got some red on the board. We finally got some compelling storylines. We finally got one match on Saturday, the final one that went to the 18th hole, and there was some drama. You know, this United States team was looking for a spark. They were needing a spark. I think they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder here late on Saturday, but it's likely too little too late when it comes to the scoreboard.
Yeah, the largest comeback in Ryder Cup history entering the final day is 4. Now they're just 1 point off of that. So not impossible. There is a slight chance. And KP mentioned it. We saw a change to those morning foursomes from day 1 to day 2. Brooks and Scotty, after sitting out on Friday, a lot of folks were thinking, hey, maybe this is like what we need to come back and win and kind of get that spark and revitalize the U.S. No, they lost 9-7, the biggest loss in Ryder Cup history. Scotty was visibly upset after this loss. Rick, how devastating is that for the USA team and just their morale in general, and for them to be able to bounce back and perform in the afternoon after that loss?
Yeah, I think there's a couple items here. I picked up this group because I saw that this could be historic, so I picked this group up, and I mean the vibes around the European squad were massive. I mean it really sparked the morning when Victor Hovland and Ludwig Aberg go out and beat the #1 player in the world and Brooks Koepka in dominating fashion, and we saw what it did to Scotty Scheffler. And I think, you know, there's a lot of obviously disappointment in the performance from not only Scotty but from the team. I think there's a little bit of an embarrassment factor there, right? You're the #1 player in the world. You're on a team that is supposed to be competing, and you're not only getting your butts kicked as a team, but you're getting your butt kicked individually for the worst foursomes loss in Ryder Cup history. I think that it did end up evolving into potentially a rallying point for that afternoon session. You know, the number one player in the world is literally head in hands greenside after a devastating defeat. If that's not something that sparks you, I don't know what will. And we saw basically immediately in the afternoon, one of Scotty's good friends, Sam Burns, was immediately trying to get the crowd into this. He was trying to work a spark for the American team. So obviously not the way you want to get a chip on a shoulder, not a way you want to get a little bit of juice in your game, but I do think it ended up providing that afternoon juice that the Americans needed.
Yeah, you know, Jacqueline, this is there's a lot of different ways to look at this Ryder Cup. I think one interesting one is that the United States' three best players are 1-8-1 so far in these matches, and that one win came very late in the day on Saturday. We actually just watched it. Patrick Cantlay and Wyndham Clark beat Rory McIlroy and Matt Fitzpatrick. Other than that, if you say the U.S.'s three best players are Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, and Scotty Scheffler, and I think everybody thinks there's probably some variation of that. Maybe you could throw a Brooks in there. Brooks has been really bad, but coming in, that was kind of presumed to be the three best guys. They're 1-8-1. And you can't have your top three guys go 1-8-1 and expect to win the Ryder Cup. On the flip side, Europe's three best guys, Rory, Hovland, and Jon Rahm, are 7-2-2. So it's almost the exact opposite records. And I think you're seeing the result of that on the scoreboard right now.
Yeah, so Scotty, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, not seeing, any really progression from them, but also 0 wins from JT and Jordan Spieth at the Ryder Cup. And these guys were more of a controversial choice to make the U.S. squad, but just not showing up, not bringing that spark, not really performing like we thought with the experience that they do have. Rick, what's gone wrong for these guys?
A lot of things. I think one, I think they were put in a bad position, admittedly, out of the gate. I would have liked to have learned what they were going to have immediately out of the gate and on Friday's morning session. We didn't get that. We didn't see them until Friday afternoon, and they played just well enough to continue to get rolled out in these later sessions. The problem is, they have not ham and egged it. They have not done anything to help one another at all. It seems like on a consistent basis, one of them was in their pocket, creating essentially a 2-on-1 situation for the Europeans against either Jordan Spieth by himself or Justin Thomas by himself. And I thought that Justin Thomas played okay, or at least played in the way that we've seen him play for the vast majority of the year, which is flashes of brilliance, a couple of loose shots, and the ability to miss some short putts when they really matter. And that was no different and has been no different here at the Ryder Cup. The one thing that I have noticed is as he got down the stretch, both of these Saturday matches, when the pressure ramped up, he had that right miss pop up again. He did it on 17 in the morning. He hits it into the right side and essentially ends the United States chances there, and then he did it again in the afternoon, I think on 15 into the right greenside bunker, and it just, when you're not comfortable in your game and you put it under the most pressure in the biggest spotlight that you can put it on, these errors are going to happen, and they popped up again for JT on Saturday.
Yeah, I was with this group for most of Saturday afternoon, Jacqueline, and there wasn't a lot of juice. Spieth was bad on Saturday. He did not play very well. I don't know that. I mean, one of the problems, Jacqueline, is they don't have a ton of options at this point, right? Ricky didn't play very well. You can't run Brooks and Scheffler back out there after they get beat 9-7. So they're just a little bit out of options, and they're just hoping to get something out of JT and Spieth. And they didn't. Spieth was kind of all over the yard. JT wasn't making putts. He had a right miss going on with his iron. So there just wasn't. They're not sharp, and they couldn't conjure up some of the magic that they did on Friday afternoon during that 4-ball session. So it was not what you wanted out of them. But I don't know how high expectations necessarily were coming into the week. They got higher once some of the other players started playing worse, and so that was part of the problem, I guess. But they were not very good on Saturday afternoon.
And guys, I know we talked about how Spieth and JT, having them on the team, was a little bit controversial at the time of the team selection and when that was announced. So, Kyle, what do you think the U.S. takes away from the team selection process for next time, seeing how Spieth and JT have performed this go-around?
Well, I think my point with JT all along is, I've told Rick 1,000 times, is that he's not necessarily just here for his golf. He's here because he's important in the team room and he's a leader and guys follow him and they listen to him and he's a veteran and he's kind of their emotional center. And I still think all those things are true. So I don't know if they had to do it over again, that they would do anything differently. I think they would still take JT, even though the golf, I think it's been okay at times. It hasn't been a disaster. It hasn't been great. It's been just kind of all right. But again, he's not necessarily here just for his golf. So I think that they'll continue to pick guys that are, you know, not necessarily playing the best, but who makes the best team. Now, we've got a lot to talk about with who does make the best team, but I certainly think that JT is going to be part of that group for a very long time.
I hope the big takeaway is blow it all up. Let's come up with some new process for evaluating both play on the golf course and the ability to conjure up your own juice. That's one thing that Kyle has been mentioning that I completely agree with, is you need guys who can kind of build their own momentum. It's a lot like basketball where you need someone who can create their own shots. Here, especially in this format, you need someone who can create their own energy, because that energy starts to go throughout the team. It starts to make its way around the golf course. And I probably did not think that that was a real thing until you see it happen right in front of you. And for the first 3 sessions, the Americans were essentially zombies walking through this golf course, just waiting to be beaten by the Europeans. So I think that it is not only obviously a huge emphasis on who's playing well, who is going to fit the golf course the best, who is going to be a versatile pair for another partner, but someone who can create their own juice, because I think that has been the biggest thing missing from this team. And it might not even be a player, Jacqueline. You know, captains can create juice. Vice captains can create juice. There's a lot of different ways to get it done. Whatever that combination is, did not happen here for the United States this time around.
Yeah, after that very disappointing morning session on Friday, it seemed like JT and Spieth were the first sign of life for the U.S. in the afternoon. But let's talk about the Europeans, guys, led by Rory McIlroy. They have been just dominant through this entire past couple of days. Is that more of a matter of them being better, or is it just something that the U.S. hasn't really figured out or that they're doing wrong, Rick?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. The big three, the Victor Hovland, Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm, they are 3 of the best players in the world. You know, you could line them up with Scotty Scheffler or other guys from the United States team and put them in any order.
Kyle, I think we lost Rick, but if you want to pick it up.
We've lost Rick. He's about 100 feet behind me. Again, he needs to get up in the front for better Wi-Fi up here. But listen, like the Europeans have been, they've been good. You know, they've been really solid, especially in foursomes. You know, they went 7-1 in foursomes, which means they've run their record now in the last 3 Ryder Cups in Europe, Jacqueline, to 19-3-2 in foursomes, which is not going to get it done for the Americans. So they've been awesome in foursomes, but again, the Americans have been bad. I mean, if you look at Brooks Koepka and Scotty Scheffler, they're 5 over through the first 3 holes in foursomes this morning. That is, I mean, Jacqueline, you and I might be able to be 5 over through the first 3 holes. They were so bad throughout, and so you know you've got a situation where Ludwig Aberg and Victor Hovland, they don't have to do a ton. They can make part. They won the 3rd hole today with a bogey. That should never happen in a Ryder Cup, and it did with 2 of the United States' major champions playing together. So it's been a little bit of both. I think the U.S. has been obviously better in 4-ball, but the Europeans have. I've been impressed with how they kept the pressure down. You know, I mentioned it earlier, but Friday afternoon they kept the pressure down. They didn't let up. They squeaked out 3 half points to really put the U.S. in a bad position going into Saturday, which means now they're in a bad position going into Sunday as well.
KP, I don't know. I think you're giving me too much credit when it comes to golf. You have never seen me play, and it is not pretty. I can guarantee that. All right, guys. So Europe leading 10.5 to 5.5. Only twice has one side come back from a 10-6 deficit on the final day, and the U.S. is down by more than that at this point. So, Rick, I'll go to you. What can the Americans do at all, if anything, to pull out all the stops to try and put their rally caps on and get it done, if there is just a sliver of a chance for the Americans?
They should probably make a trip to the Vatican tonight. It's not too far away. Maybe start saying their prayers. This is, I think what they should really do is they should buy into this whole chip on their shoulder thing. They should all come out hatless on Sunday and try to just rally around and fight back against this European crowd that has gotten quite rowdy. And they're going to have to top load it. They're going to have to put their best players out early and get red on the board. That's the only way to get this done, because if you don't do that, this will be over, 90 minutes into Sunday singles, and it'll be a party from then on out. So it's a very clear line. Get yourself red on the board, get it done early, and have no other option.
I like the idea of going out hatless to show some solidarity with Patrick Cantlay. But listen, I think it's going to feel like Paris. It got tight for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in Paris, where you throw some red on the board and you start kind of talking yourself into it, and then ultimately Europe kind of seals the deal. I think that's probably how it's going to go on Sunday at Rome as well.
All right, so get on the board early, no hat, and go to the Vatican. We got it. Check, check, check. All right, KP, Rick Gaiman joining us from Rome for a Ryder Cup Day 2 recap. Europe is up 10.5 to 5.5 over the U.S. And, of course, you can catch KP and Rick on the First Cut podcast. They're keeping you up to date with everything you got to know in regards to the Ryder Cup and just the world of golf in general. You can download and listen, follow wherever you get your pods, or you can scan that QR code on your screen.